And we're back for ship graveyards.
So this looks more like a quaint little western town than a ship graveyard, honestly.
And apparently we're going to go to a place called the Pleasing Garden.
That sounds suspiciously like a euphemism.
So, once again, you'll have to ask Marja if she'll let you go to her Pleasing Garden.
Fine.
I'm not in a relationship, I can't make these jokes, so... Once again, another thing in the middle of the fucking desert that moves around.
Oh, for Christ's sake.
It's not really a garden.
Yeah, it's more like a thing in the desert.
A teleporter in the desert. That takes you high above the sky, apparently.
Huh.
Or another dimension, I'm not really sure.
I'm assuming we're just very high up.
It could be either.
Oh god, it's a teleporter maze, isn't it?
There's teleporters, but not necessarily a maze.
Had me worried there for a second.
Anyway, more mailbag. Well, this one doesn't really apply to you because you're not really a comic book fan, so I'll just ignore that one. What's your opinion on fanworks this week? Still don't care for them?
Fanworks are fine. It's fanon that we do not like.
Basically. When I read smutty fanfiction, it's because, you know, I just want to read smutty fanfiction. I don't necessarily think, hey, this is totally how it should be.
Quite so.
Because really, I think, like, the thing with my obsession with continuity is more, this is what actually happened, and this is what is going, any future projects are going to be based off of, so it's the only thing that really matters. We can all play the what-if game however much we want, but...
Yeah.
We just have to keep in mind that, well, that's not how it happened, and that's how it's never going to happen, so... It's about acceptance. I'm trying to get away from the reality of the situation, as it were.
Right. I mean, I have written fanfiction for years and years and years. But I know that it has absolutely no bearing on the canon at all.
That and it probably follows canon anyway, so... More sand!
Imagine that. It's almost like we're in the middle of a fucking desert.
Is that a gigantic fucking mantis?
Huh. I was not expecting the mantis.
A giant mantis called Gigmentis.
Well, I suppose it's a creative name.
It's not really a mantis either, it's more like a caterpillar with, like, the mantis head and arms.
Yeah, it's very strange looking.
But yes, fanworks are fine, just don't do any of this death of the author bullshit. Since you guys tabletop, how do you usually come up with characters? Basically, I could look at a piece of lint on the ground and be like, I have a character idea.
How do I come up with characters? Very, very reluctantly.
Usually I do it.
Alex, how this usually works is Alex will, like, bounce ideas off of me until he comes up with one I like, and then I will expand upon it from there. Because I am terrible at coming up with characters.
Well, and then after, like, an hour, I'll have come up with more stuff for that character than Matt did, so...
Yeah. Usually he will make vague suggestions as to the character's backstory, motivations, etc., etc. And I will craft it into an actual character.
Morbid.
Huh. I mean, I guess if you're gonna do anything with your opponent's head, it might as well just be thrown around to hit switches with.
Yep. And then I got a bionic arm.
Huh. When did this turn into Bionic Commando?
Just now.
Okay, yeah, point.
Yeah, basically, it doesn't take much for me to come up with a character idea. In fact, I could probably come up with one in, like, the next 5 minutes.
Go for it.
I have to talk. I'm just saying I could, not that I want to.
Okay, fine.
Alex, do you play any indie games? Not really. Not especially. I'm sure I have some indie games on my Steam account somewhere.
I think I've got a few, technically. Enter the Gungeon is an indie game, right?
I don't
I guess. The lines have been blurred at this point. When does an indie developer stop being an indie developer?
Commercial success, usually.
And many of the quote-unquote indie games that I have played have met with commercial success and therefore no longer qualify as indie games. So, really, have any of us played an indie game?
Not lately.
The World of Mirages.
An indie game stops being an indie game when all its fans say they sold out.
Okay. I mean, granted, that usually happens with, within, 2 weeks of release. 2 weeks before release. Before the game is even released, idiots will be accusing the developers of selling out.
When it leaves early access, I'm actually trying to literally think of, I guess technically a Hard Reset was an indie game.
I'm not familiar with the name.
It's a FPS game.
That would be why.
In a more classical sense, where it's about being goofy and fun.
More like Doom?
Except with less identical corridors and levels.
Right.
Yay! More magic.
Excuse me.
But it's like I would say 20XX is still an indie game.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, that is a good point. I play the shit out of 20XX, so I guess I have played an indie game recently.
When was the last time you played it, though?
A couple of weeks ago.
I have it, but I just haven't played it. I have too many fucking games I have to play.
I know, right? My backlog is, completely and utterly fucking booked.
Are you stealing my Biscoff cookies?
I am stealing a Biscoff cookie.
Europe's favorite cookie.
They make cookie butter out of this shit.
The only reason I like those is because that's what they give you on planes. And the only reason I know about them is because I was given 2 of them on a plane, and I was like, these are actually pretty amazing.
These are pretty goddamn good cookies.
You can buy some of those at work, too. 2 for $5, I think.
Cool hat, dude.
As the tide is wont to do, except for that whole bringing in a ghost ship, apparently.
Huh. Is that, just a requirement for RPGs, a ghost ship area, like Colosseums?
I think that's basically, a standard for most video games.
Yeah.
If it happens in a medieval setting, there's probably going to be a ghost ship.
Fair point. I just got to thinking about that. Ghost ships are frequent, along with, Colosseum areas. Like in the Tales games. Every fucking Tales game has a Colosseum. I swear to God.
Well, that's just so they give you a place where if you want to refight monsters, you can. And bosses, and where they do their cameo things.
Yes.
Let's see, there's 20XX. Ares Extinction Agenda.
Question marks floating over my head right now.
All Ares Extinction Agenda is like, you got Metal Slug in my Mega Man.
Ah. Bonk.
I guess technically Amnesia is kind of a indie game.
Kinda, sorta, I guess. That was actually the first game I streamed.
It doesn't actually have mainstream popularity.
Yeah, I guess.
I didn't care much for it when I played it.
I thought it was an interesting game. I actually streamed my entire playthrough of it. There's an interesting story behind that, actually. I streamed that game in sections where my audience for that stream had seen every player just run and hide and cower for like 10 minutes. I was actually, getting up and following monsters around and seeing what the fuck was going on. To which my fiance's friend, Eli, was like, he's got balls of steel. And so in response to this, eventually Marge met John St. John at a convention and got her to say...
Him?
Huh?
Got him to say.
Got him to say...
I was gonna say, John St. John is woman. That's the deepest, manliest lady voice I've ever heard.
Sorry, been drinking a little bit. Anyway, met John St. John at a convention and got him to say on stage, in front of a very large audience, Kieran has balls of steel.
If anybody who's watching this was actually at that convention.
It's a possibility. Anyway. So, yeah, I thought Amnesia was pretty alright. I never played Machine for Pigs, but I hear it was more of a walking simulator than anything, and not really a game as such as an interactive movie with very little interaction.
See, I don't care much for spooky games because they tend to rely on, like, ooga booga booga scares rather than, like, actually being frightening.
There is a lot of that in video games. I still need to play through Alien Isolation one of these days.
That was part of the reason why I enjoy Silent Hill games, because I spend more time psyching myself up to be scared than the game actually scaring me.
I have finished more horror games than Alex has.
Well, depending on what your definition of horror is. I mean, technically, Resident Evil games are horror games.
I mean, like, actual horror. Like, well, Amnesia, for instance. I can't think of the game we were discussing presently, but you have legitimately been too scared to finish a couple of games that I went on to complete.
Right now I think that's just sitting at Alien Isolation.
I don't know how to break it to you, dude, but you're kind of already dead. I mean, you're a fucking skeleton. You're pretty well dead.
A skeleton called Cybergeist.
Cybergeist. So he's a robotic skeleton,
I guess.
A cybernetic skeleton.
I'm not really sure how the naming conventions in this really work.
Yeah, it does seem to be all over the place in this game. I really don't know what to make of it.
Yeah, I think I played Amnesia for like an hour, and I'm just like, I kind of get what this game has to offer now.
It aggravated me at some points because it runs on puzzle game logic.
Rather than horror game logic?
Yeah. I spent like half an hour floundering on one particular section because, hey, it runs on puzzle game logic.
Speaking of fucking floundering around.
Yes. The obligatory Alex runs around aimlessly for 5 minutes section of the video.
Because the game was like, hey, don't forget about the switch next to the bed. And I forgot that it's in a room, like, not here. It's in a room coming up.
So is there a point to killing all these skeletons and running around aimlessly on this ghost ship?
Killing the skeletons, not really. Wandering around aimlessly, also not really.
So we're just kind of here because.
Yeah, it's this room that, you know... Even if we're shaved down to our bones.
Which you kind of are.
Good thing.
I feel so alone, gonna wind up a big old pile of them bones.
With an axe and a jewel in its chest, I guess. Besides Amnesia, I can't actually think of the last horror game I really played. I guess Dead Space kind of counts.
Kinda. I mean, the first one more so than the other two, but...
I don't know, I'm one of those people, it's like, you can't really do sequels to horror games, especially starring the same protagonist, without it becoming more action-oriented. Or, really, you can't really do sequels to horror games in general, because as knowledge of said horror events becomes public knowledge, people learn to deal with it. So based on that logic, like, after maybe 2 or 3 Resident Evil games, we weren't really gonna have, like, spooky, scary zombies anymore. It was going to become, oh, zombies. Dead Rising was kind of like that.
Yeah, Dead Rising was more of a... I don't know what you'd call a Dead Rising, honestly.
An action comedy zombie game.
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up.
It's like, well, there's zombies. It's kind of a big deal in the first game, and then after that, it's like, well, there's zombies.
Yeah. The zombie thing has been played out. That's why my favorite zombie movie in the world was Zombieland. A fucking comedy. Not an actual horror movie about zombies. A comedy about zombies that just...
The video's over.
Oh. Well, next time on Radical Bromance, stuff.